Hello students, welcome to the 14th online lecture for the subject of sociology. We will continue with the third chapter of our textbook, that is Diversity and Unity in Indian Society. The topic that we will study in today's lecture is Challenges to National Unity. India has always been seen by scholars as a unique example of unity in diversity, in spite of regional, linguistic, religious, and ethnic differences dividing India into apparently contradictory social groups. The diversities in terms of communities, race, classes, languages, and subcultures are bound to pose obstacles to the achievement of national integration. The following are the factors which obstruct the growth of national feeling. That is, number one, casteism. Number two, communalism. Number three, regionalism. Number four, linguism. Number five, economic inequalities. Number one, casteism. Casteism refers to extreme loyalty to one's own caste before loyalty to the nation. Caste ties are so strong that people are inclined to think in terms of caste before the nation. This may lead to caste members protecting their own caste group through social services, education, medical, and other welfare schemes. This can lead to several problems, that is, it can restrict interaction in society. Also, when such caste loyalty takes place, political overtones and it becomes dangerous. This is because caste members take with them their biases and prejudices into politics. People are influenced by them and vote for their own caste members. Caste, having numerical strength, rise up through politics. Those who win the elections then favor their caste group in various ways. Because of all this, the problem of national integration becomes very serious. Despite laws, urbanization, industrialization, and education, the caste system continues in the mindsets of many people. Caste has become a means for competing for access to resources and power in modern India. Discrimination on the basis of caste is a major hurdle for national integration. People engaged in weakening the unity of the country tried desperately to create divisions and rift in the name of caste, creed, and culture. They succeeded in creating mistrust among Indian people. The feeling of social neglect among scheduled caste due to suppression by upper caste has disturbed the sense of we feeling and unity. Caste atrocities get reported from time to time. Caste prejudices are yet another factor that affects the way people behave or relate to others. Excessive caste-based loyalty is particularly evident at the time of elections, with political parties persuading members of their own caste for the sake of votes. The Constitution of India allows affirmative action through positive discrimination, that is, reservation in education and employment, which is based on caste and socio-economic backwardness for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Later, this was extended to other backward classes, that is OBCs. Recently, the Government of India has announced 10% quota for economically weaker sections. These reservations are restricted to government-run or government-aided institutions. The central government has fixed 15% reservation for scheduled caste, 7.5% for scheduled tribe, and 27% for other backward classes. A sizable proportion of scheduled caste who have embraced Buddhism and Christianity also qualifies for such reservations. Number 2, communalism. Communalism refers to extreme loyalty towards one's own religion before the nation. India is one of the countries in the world where so many religions coexist side by side. While on the one hand, this enriches our cultural heritage, at the same time, we also make sure that this does not become the cause of separatism. Communal conflict is one of the worst blots on national reputation. It is displeasing factor that affects the unity of the nation. Whatever may be the cause of the conflict, the damage it does to the nation is very deep. Socially speaking, communal conflict creates feeling of deep hatred, bitterness and ill feeling between members of different religious communities. Such conflicts also lead to feelings of insecurity and loosen bonds of solidarity. Economically speaking, communal conflict slow down economic growth and development. Often resources have to be diverted for the damage caused by communal riots and clashes. Production suffers and there is severe monetary loss for the nation. Politically speaking, communal conflict weakens democracy. It allows politicians to use religion as force for their vested interest. Also, on the international front, communal conflict affects India's image adversely and weakens it considerably. Religious resentment has posed a serious challenge to national integration in India. People belonging to different religions feel that their religion is superior. This is a problem of enhanced ethnocentrism. Religious fundamentalists try to impose their religious practices on others, which leads to situations of conflict. Political manipulation is often known to project one religion against the other, which has resulted in communal riots, mutual distrust, and disintegration. Large scale illiteracy and superstitions are responsible, along with other causes, for the rise of communal violence and divisive tendencies in the country. Religious fundamentalism can lead to acts of terrorism, which can create a fear psychosis in the minds of people. Number 3, regionalism. Regionalism refers to extreme loyalty to one's own state or region before one's nation. This interferes with national integration to a great extent. The history of a particular region is glorified and often it is misused to stress divisive forces, thus ignoring the common cultural legacy and heritage. Regionalism emerges due to the desire of people speaking one language to have one state. There is also a strong urge to give priority to the economic development of one's own region. This leads to interstate rivalries. As long as this interstate rivalry is economic and social example for funds and welfare scheme, it is healthy. But when this rivalry takes political overtones, it becomes very dangerous. Political parties give more importance and weightage to local and regional matters and problems rather than the nation as a whole. Regionalism strengthens sectarian biases by political parties. This has led to regional movements for state rights and militant movements for separatism. For example, the Jammu and Kashmir issue, the Punjab problem, Assam issue, etc. Number 4, linguism. Linguism has its origin in the linguistic division of states and linguistic minorities within the state. In every state, there is one dominant regional language. Along with this, there are large sections of people speaking other regional languages and dialects. They constitute the linguistic minorities. For example, in Maharashtra, Marathi is the dominant regional language. At the same time, there are a large number of people speaking Gujarati, Konkani, Sindhi, Punjabi, Tamil, Kannada, etc. Even among Marathi speaking people, there are variations in dialect. If these minorities begin to feel that their interests are being disregarded and their welfare ignored, such a feeling is harmful to our national unity and solidarity. Linguism today has acquired seriousness and intensity. It has led to a definite form of linguistic nationalism which can provide enough push for separatism in India. Language plays an important role in communication in an organization. It enables us to express opinions, share feelings, and convey messages and build knowledge. When language becomes the basis for conflict between people, this problem is called linguism. It is a form of excess loyalty towards one's own language. Linguistic extremism poses a threat to national integration. Indian states have been divided on linguistic basis. People of one language try to establish their language over others. The notion of Hindi as an official language of the Union does not find complete acceptance across the country. There are many parts within India where Hindi is largely unspoken, especially in South India and in some northeastern states. The harassment of people who speak languages other than the dominant language is well known. The atrocities committed on linguistic minorities deserves mention. Number 5, economic inequalities. The economic standard of people in a state depends on a number of factors like resources available, management and organization, fertility of land, distribution of wealth, and so on. All the states are not equal in this regard, and this leads to economic imbalances. Unequal distribution of wealth within a state causes tension and conflict. Very often, wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. Profits from the private sector ends up in the hand of a few privileged section and not for the common good. This kind of monopoly does not allow healthy competition. There are several factors that are responsible for economic inequality in society. These includes number 1, family influence, number 2, private property, number 3, educational differences, number 4, availability and access to opportunities, number 5, individual differences, number 6, social environment. Let's go in detail. Number 1, family influence. The family to which we belong influences our choices and opportunities. For example, if one belongs to the below poverty line category, it may be difficult for the parents to provide healthy nutrition. Don't we come across news of malnutrition deaths of infants? Number 2, private property. Numerous people do not own physical property on one hand, and on the other hand, there are very few who owns excessive property. It is true that the large part of resources available are consumed by relatively few people who have the means to do so. Number 3, educational differences. This is often influenced by the economic strata to which one identifies and belongs. Ask yourself, who are the persons who can avail of professional courses? Who can afford private school education? Who can afford an international education? Number 4, availability and access to opportunities. The purchasing capacity of individuals and groups determine our patterns of consumption and the extent of consumption. For example, so many Anganwadis and primary health centers have no budgetary provisions to improve their infrastructure and services. How many children can have access to mental health care, counselors, and psychologists? Number 5, individual differences. All of us have different capacities and capabilities. These are a combination of our individual potential as well as one's societal experiences. For example, an individual may have a flair of art, music, or acting. However, unless there is a scope to develop these abilities or skill, it may be impossible to utilize one's talent for individual or social benefit. Number 6, social environment. The social environment in which one experiences life, for example, family, neighborhood, peer group, workplace, influences and impacts how we develop as individuals and as a society. The impact of globalization has both positive and negative consequences. One demerit is that it has widened the gap between the rich and the poor. For example, the mall culture found in the big cities clearly favors those who have than the have nots. Privatization of healthcare, insurance, occupation, and education are more beneficial to the upper economic strata of the society. Economic inequality persists in all social systems of society. People have different access to rewards such as money, influence, power, etc., because of their personal or group characteristics. So, those with higher status generally have better access to rewards compared to those with a lower status. Inequality is thus built into the fabric of society and tends to get passed down from one generation to the other. Welfare state and differing slabs of taxation were ways in which attempts were made to minimize economic inequalities. It was thought that perhaps redistributing wealth from the rich to the needy would help to eradicate poverty. However, this does not always work because help may not necessarily reach those in need. However, our understanding of equality and inequality is undergoing a change. Today, significant changes are observed in the status of women, minorities, and the underprivileged. Side by side, we face new risks and threats to our environment which do not discriminate between rich and the poor. For example, pollution, global warming, and terrorism. Lack of hygiene or cleanliness, these are problems which are created by human beings and which needs a collective effort. Some policies have to promote social cohesion and interdependence. Rights and responsibilities are for all from the bottom of the social hierarchy to the top. Here we come to the end of this lecture. With this, we have completed third chapter of our textbook. We will start with a new chapter in the next lecture. Thank you.